You're tired because you don't know when to stop.
It's a simple sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it really lands like a punch in the gut.
A punch in the gut. For me, it felt more like a sniper shot. I read that line in the source material last night, and I honestly felt like I needed to look over my shoulder,
To see if someone was watching you?
Yeah, to see if the author was watching me doom scroll through my work chats at like 11:30 p.m.
Welcome to Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
But welcome back to the deep dive. We are tackling a subject today that I suspect most of our listeners are going to have a pretty visceral reaction to it.
I think you're right about that.
If you classify yourself as a high performer, maybe an entrepreneur, or just a busy professional who feels like this check engine light has been blinking for, 3 years, and you've just put a little piece of electrical tape over it.
So you don't have to look at it anymore.
Right. This one is for you.
And you're ignoring the light because the car is, for all intents and purposes, still moving.
Exactly. The car is moving, the radio's on, we're making good time. Why would you ever stop? But today we are diving into a collection of articles and some research that's been compiled under the title, The Finite Fuel of the High Performer.
Right.
Now, I want to set the ground rules here, because when I first saw that title, I'll be honest, I rolled my eyes. I thought, oh, great, here we go. Another wellness lecture.
Take a bath, light a candle.
Exactly. Manifest your destiny. And I'm sitting here thinking, I have a mortgage to pay. I have a business to run. I can't manifest a quarterly report into existence. But you promised me this isn't that.
It is absolutely not that. If anything, this is more of an engineering discussion.
Right.
We aren't talking about wellness in that fluffy Instagram quote sense. We're talking about like mechanical failure analysis.
Okay, I like that. Mechanical failure.
The source material argues pretty forcefully that burnout isn't really an emotional problem at its core. It's a physics problem.
Yeah.
It's about resource management in a closed system, your body.
The core thesis that really grabbed me, and frankly, the one I want to maybe challenge you on a bit today, is this idea that hard work isn't the thing that burns us out.
Right.
The source says, most people don't burn out from working hard. They burn out from never stopping.
It's a critical distinction. It's probably the most important sentence in the whole text. The variable that correlates with burnout isn't the intensity of the exertion. It's the lack of cessation, the lack of stopping.
Okay, but isn't that just splitting hairs? I mean, really, if I'm working a 16-hour day, isn't that both high intensity and a lack of stopping?
Not necessarily. And this is where we really need to get into the physiology of it, into the mechanics. Today, we're going to deconstruct what the source calls fake hustle.
I love that term.
We're going to look at the neuroscience of how your brain literally rewires itself under constant load. And I mean physically changes, not metaphorically. Yeah. And we're going to try to really draw a hard line between discipline and what the source calls self-abuse.
Self-abuse. Wow, that's a heavy term.
It is. But I think you'll see it's shockingly accurate when you break it down.
Well, let's test that. I want to start with this burnout paradox, this whole idea that hard work is safe, but nonstop work is lethal. Because, I look at history, I look at the great innovators, I look at Elon Musk supposedly sleeping on the factory floor, I look at professional athletes. They work incredibly hard.
Unbelievably hard.
So are you telling me they aren't burning out?
Well, some of them are. We just don't always see the crash and burn that happens behind the scenes. But let's look at the biology, because it's actually really elegant. The human body is designed for stress. We are incredibly good at it.
It feels like it sometimes.
It is. If you look at our evolutionary history, we are built for acute, high-intensity stressors. Chasing down prey, running from a predator, lifting a heavy rock. We have these incredible systems, adrenaline, cortisol, mobilizing glucose to our muscles, that are designed to redline the engine to survive.
So the red line is a feature, not a bug.
Precisely. The red line is a feature. It's meant to be used. You can run a car at 7,000 RPM. It's built to do that to pass a truck on the highway. But, and here's the physics of it all, heat is a byproduct of that exertion.
Okay.
In an engine, if you redline for 10, maybe 15 seconds, the cooling system, the radiator, the fan, it handles the heat, it dissipates it. But if you tried to redline that same engine for 10 hours straight without ever dropping the RPMs,
right,
what would happen?
It would explode. Or melt, something catastrophic.
Exactly. The heat accumulates faster than it can be dissipated. The metal warps, the gaskets blow, the engine seizes. It's a catastrophic failure.
Okay, so in this analogy, what is the heat in my body? When I'm working, what's building up?
Well, on a physical level, it's metabolic waste products in the brain. It's inflammation in your vascular system. It's the depletion of key neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. When you sleep, or when you truly, genuinely disengage from work, your body gets to cool down.
The maintenance cycle.
It's the full maintenance cycle. It flushes the waste with cerebrospinal fluid. It repairs the micro tears in your muscles and your brain. If you never stop, and I mean truly stop, not just pausing to check Instagram or Twitter, that heat never dissipates, you are starting every single day with the engine already running hot from yesterday.
See, that's where I get stuck, because on paper, I feel like I do stop. I sleep at night, most nights. I have weekends, well, sort of. But the source talks about this always-on phenomenon. It argues that even when we aren't working, we aren't really off.
And that's the trap. Let me ask you this. You're watching a movie with your partner on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Your work phone is on the coffee table. Is it face up or face down?
I feel attacked already.
Yeah.
It's face up, yes.
You aren't checking it. You're trying to be present.
Yeah.
But you know it's there. And you know that if a crisis email from your biggest client comes through, that screen will light up.
Yeah.
In that moment, what is your brain doing?
It's listening. It's waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. It's monitoring.
Yep.
In neuroscience terms, you are in a state of vigilance. Your background operating system is allocating a slice of your energy, your finite fuel, to threat detection. So you might feel like you're relaxing on the couch, but your baseline level of cortisol, the stress hormone, is elevated.
Because I'm in standby mode, not shutdown mode.
You've got it. Standby mode still drains the battery. It's a slow, constant trickle.
That explains so much. That explains why I can sit through a 2-hour movie and feel more tired at the end of it than when I started. I haven't done anything.
You weren't watching the movie. You were guarding the phone. And this is where the source makes a really crucial point about modern work culture, especially for the kinds of high performers who are probably listening to this. We have created an environment where the off switch is viewed as a liability.
A weakness, even.
Or weakness. If you are unreachable, you are vulnerable. If you are offline, you might be missing a crucial opportunity.
Or you're just seen as less committed than the person who answers that email at 2 in the morning. There's always that person.
Right. And that competition, that silent, unspoken, who can care the most contest. It creates a scenario where the most ambitious, the most dedicated people systematically dismantle their own cooling systems.
Yeah.
They take the radiator out of their own engine because they think it's weighing them down.
And the scary part, the part the source highlights under that section sneaking up on you, is that high performers are the worst people at noticing when the damage is already done.
They're the absolute worst.
Why is that? You'd think if you're smart enough to build a company or navigate a complex career, you'd be smart enough to, read your own dashboard.
It's the opposite. It's a paradox. If you are a high performer, you've spent your entire life training yourself to ignore the dashboard. Think about it. How did you get through your university finals?
Caffeine and sheer stubborn will, nothing else.
And how'd you get through that first brutal year of your startup or that entry-level job where they just grind you down?
By ignoring the fact that I was tired and hungry and probably miserable, you just push through.
Exactly. You have conditioned yourself through years of reinforcement to view fatigue, pain, and stress as obstacles to be overcome, not as important signals to be heeded. You have a very high tolerance for discomfort. It's a superpower until it's not.
So the system is whispering, but I've trained myself to be deaf to whispers.
It whispers, hey, we're a little tired. You ignore it. Then it starts to talk in a normal voice. Okay, we're genuinely exhausted now. You drink an espresso and tell it to shut up. You don't actually notice the burnout until the system creates a catastrophic, undeniable failure.
Like what?
Like a full-blown panic attack in the middle of a presentation.
Yeah.
Like a herniated disc in your back from chronic muscle tension. Like a sudden, crushing bout of depression that seems to come out of nowhere. You only notice it when it's a 5-alarm fire because you have systematically muted all the early warning alarms.
That is genuinely terrifying. It's like disabling the smoke detector in your house because the beeping it makes when the battery is low is annoying you.
That is exactly what it is. And you wake up when the roof is already on fire.
And we do it because of this culture we're all swimming in, which I think brings us perfectly to the second big part of the source material, deconstructing hustle culture.
Yes. Let's get into this.
Yeah, let's talk about this because the source uses a term that I see everywhere now, but they define it in a way that's really, really interesting. Fake hustle.
It's a great term, isn't it?
It is. I always assumed fake hustle just meant people on social media pretending to be rich, renting a Lamborghini for a photo. But the source defines it as confusing activity with productivity.
It goes even deeper than that. Fake hustle is performative struggle. It is the deeply ingrained belief that if you aren't suffering, you aren't working hard enough.
Oh, I know this feeling intimately. If I finish my to-do list for the day at 2 p.m., my first feeling isn't relief, it's guilt.
What do you do?
I feel like I should find something else to do, something to stress me out until at least 6:00 p.m., or I haven't earned my paycheck for the day. It's ridiculous.
That is the trap. In an industrial economy, value was directly tied to time. You stand at the assembly line for 8 hours, you make 8 hours worth of widgets. If you leave early, you produce less. It's a simple, linear equation.
Makes sense.
But in a knowledge economy, which is where most of us live now, value is tied to things like decision-making, creativity, insight, and problem-solving. Those things do not scale linearly with hours worked.
In fact, they often scale inversely.
Exactly. The more hours you put in past a certain point, the worse your decisions get.
Meaning the longer I work, the dumber I get.
The dumber you get, and frankly, the more dangerous you become to your own business or your own career.
Yeah.
But fake hustle is this desire to look busy because we lack clear metrics for what effective looks like in a knowledge job.
It's hard to measure a good idea.
It's very hard. It's much easier to measure Dave was at his desk until 9:00 p.m. every night this week. So we default to the visible, tangible metric, which is suffering and duration. We glamorize exhaustion.
We really do. It's a badge of honor. How are you? Oh man, I'm swamped, buried, so tired. It's a status symbol.
And this is where the source gets into the neuroscience that I really want to break down, because it's not just a mindset. The article says, quote, "Non-stop grind culture rewires your brain."
Rewires is a buzzword people throw around a lot. Are we talking metaphorically or are we talking actual physical neuroplasticity?
We are talking about functional and structural changes. Let's get technical for just a second. You have a part of your brain called the amygdala. Think of it as the threat detection center. It's the alarm bell.
Got it.
Then you have the prefrontal cortex right behind your forehead. That's the CEO of your brain. It's responsible for logic, planning, long-term thinking, and emotional regulation. In a healthy, well-rested brain, the prefrontal cortex sends inhibitory signals down to the amygdala. It basically says, hey, quiet down. That critical email isn't a saber-toothed tiger. It's just Steve from accounting.
Steve can be pretty aggressive, though. Let's be fair.
He can be, but he's not going to eat you. Probably. Now, here's what happens in a state of grind culture. When you are in a state of chronic, low-grade stress, never stopping, always monitoring, always rushing, your cortisol levels remain constantly elevated.
Okay.
High cortisol is toxic to the neurons in the prefrontal cortex. Over time, it literally causes them to atrophy. The connections weaken and shrink.
Wait. So you're telling me the CEO of my brain is physically shrinking?
It's weakening.
Yeah.
The brake lines that control the alarm system are being cut, one by one. And at the exact same time, the amygdala, the alarm bell itself, actually undergoes hypertrophy.
Yeah.
It grows. It becomes larger and more sensitive.
You're kidding me.
Not at all. So now you have a louder, more sensitive alarm bell and a weaker, less effective CEO trying to manage it.
So I become more stressed out by smaller and smaller things, and I have less ability to calm myself down when it happens.
Exactly. This is why you find yourself snapping at your spouse because the dishwasher wasn't loaded the right way. This is why a minor delay in a project feels like the end of the world. Your brain's stress mode has become its new default mode.
And once that neural pathway is paved, my brain, it prefers it.
It does. It's an addiction loop. Your brain becomes addicted to the cocktail of dopamine and adrenaline it gets from putting out fires. So silence, calm, and relaxation start to feel really uncomfortable, even dangerous.
Is that why the first day of a vacation is always the most stressful day of the year for me? I swear, I'm pacing around the hotel room. I'm irritable. I can't sit still.
That is withdrawal. Your brain is a junkie looking for its next hit of stress. Your amygdala is screaming, why is it so quiet in here? Where is the threat? I can't see the threat. It starts manufacturing threats just to have something to do.
We are literally addicts for our own stress.
We are, and breaking that cycle isn't just about taking a deep breath. It's about aggressive, structural rehabilitation of your brain's neural networks. It takes real, intentional work.
This transitions us perfectly to the next section, which I think is the real core of this whole thing. Because if my brain is lying to me, if my brain is telling me to keep pushing because it's addicted to the push, how on earth do I distinguish between doing what's necessary and just hurting myself?
Yeah.
The source calls this the thin line, discipline versus self-abuse.
This is the most important distinction in the entire text, in my opinion.
Okay, I really need you to help me with this one, because I pride myself on discipline. It's how I've gotten anywhere. I get up early. I do the hard things first. The source says discipline is doing what needs to be done, but self-abuse is continuing to push when the tank is empty. That sounds great on paper, but in the trenches, when you're in the middle of a big project, that line feels incredibly blurry.
It feels blurry because the physical sensation can be very similar. Both discipline and self-abuse often involve discomfort. The key difference is the utility of that discomfort. Is it productive or is it destructive?
Give me a concrete example.
Okay, let's look at elite athletics because it's a very clear model.
Yeah.
A world-class runner doing interval training feels pain. Their lungs burn, their legs are heavy with lactic acid. Pushing through that specific pain is discipline. Why?
Because that's what makes you stronger.
Exactly. Because the result is a positive physiological adaptation. The stressor leads to growth. Their muscles rebuild stronger, their VO2 max increases, they get faster. That's productive pain.
Okay, I'm with you.
Now, imagine that same runner has developed a small stress fracture in their tibia. Running on that leg also causes pain. It might even feel very similar to the burn of a hard workout. But pushing through that pain doesn't lead to adaptation. It leads to the bone snapping in half. That is self-abuse.
That's destructive pain.
It's causing harm without any potential for gain.
Okay, that's super clear in sports. But how do I apply that to my knowledge work? To my business? My body isn't going to snap in half.
Isn't it? We just talked about the brain atrophying. But let's use a cognitive example. Discipline is forcing yourself to stay focused on reviewing a boring but critical contract for another hour because it needs to be 100% accurate. It's uncomfortable, but it's productive.
Right.
Self-abuse is trying to force yourself to write a high-level, creative strategy document at 3 in the morning after you've already worked an 18-hour day when your cognitive function is, for all intents and purposes, equivalent to being legally drunk.
Hold on. Is it really equivalent to being drunk? That sounds like an exaggeration.
It's not. The studies on this are incredibly clear and have been replicated many times. After about 17 to 19 hours without sleep, your reaction times, your decision-making, and your cognitive impairment match a blood alcohol level of 0.05.
That's the legal limit in many places.
Push it to 24 hours of wakefulness, and it's 0.10, which is over the legal limit everywhere. You would never let a drunk person make major financial decisions for your company, would you?
Of course not. That would be insane.
But you let your sleep-deprived self do it all the time under the guise of discipline and hustle.
Oof. That one hits hard. So when I think I'm grinding it out to finish that proposal at 2 a.m., I'm actually just drunk driving my business.
You are causing harm without gain. That is the definition of self-abuse. You are expending massive amounts of energy, your most finite resource, but the output is garbage. You end up having to redo the work the next day anyway. Or worse, you make a subtle but critical strategic error that costs you months of work down the line.
But that habit of pushing through is so deeply ingrained. I feel like if I stop, I'm quitting. It feels like a moral failing.
And that's the narrative of grind culture speaking. It has successfully framed stopping as a sign of weakness. But the expert analysis here is that when pushing through becomes your default, your only response to every problem, it ceases to be a useful tool and it becomes a trap.
It makes you a one-trick pony.
It makes you predictable and one-dimensional. Sometimes the best solution isn't to push harder. Sometimes it's to pivot or automate or ask for help or just delete the whole damn project.
Yeah.
But if your head is down and you're just pushing forward blindly, you never see those other better options.
The source mentions that ignoring rest quietly destroys focus, creativity, and health.
Yeah.
I want to double-click on that word, quietly.
Yes. That's key. It's insidious. It's the classic frog in boiling water scenario. You don't wake up one day and say, wow, my creativity is completely gone. It doesn't work like that.
How does it work?
It fades. You stop having those weird connecting the dots ideas. You start relying on templates and best practices from last year. You start innovating and start optimizing. You become rigid in your thinking.
Which is the absolute death knell for any entrepreneur or creative professional.
Absolutely. The world changes fast. Innovation requires cognitive and emotional plasticity. Exhaustion creates rigidity. It's a direct causal link.
So let's tally the bill here. Section 4 in the source is all about the finite fuel costs and consequences. We've talked about the brain wiring. But I want to talk about that creative cost specifically. The source makes a really bold claim. Never stopping kills creativity. Why can't I just brute force a creative solution by working longer hours?
Because of how the brain's neural networks are designed to operate,
Mm-hmm.
we basically have two primary modes of thinking. The first is the task-positive network, or the TPN. This is your focus mode.
A get it done mode?
Exactly. Executing a plan, checking boxes, writing code, editing a document, laser focus. Then you have the default mode network, or the DMN. This is what's active when your mind is wandering, when you're daydreaming, or just offline.
And we're usually taught that the DMN is bad. Stop daydreaming and get back to work.
Right. We've been conditioned to see it as lazy or unproductive.
Mm.
But the neuroscience over the last 2 decades has shown that the DMN is where the magic happens. It's the incubator for creativity. When you are focusing hard in the TPN, you are looking at the pieces of the puzzle you already have on the table. When you switch off and your DMN activates, your brain goes into the archives, into the library, and finds a puzzle piece from a book you read 10 years ago, connects it to a conversation you had last week, and says, hey, I wonder if this fits here.
That's the famous shower thought, the idea that comes when you're not trying.
That's precisely what it is. You cannot force a shower thought. You can only create the conditions for it to emerge. If you are never stopping, you are locking yourself permanently in the task-positive network. You are literally blocking the neural pathways required for insight and innovation.
So you're just digging the same hole deeper and deeper when the treasure is in a totally different spot.
An elegant way to put it. You are prioritizing execution over solution. You are so busy running that you never stop to ask if you're running in the right direction.
Okay, that's the creative cost. What about the health cost? We touched on inflammation, but let's get specific. The source talks about the cumulative effect. What really happens to the body after 5, 10, 15 years of this always-on lifestyle?
The scientific term for it is allostatic load. Think of it as the wear and tear on the body that grows over time when you're exposed to repeated or chronic stress. It's like the mileage on a car.
What parts break down first?
We see a major dysregulation of the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands. This is your central stress response system. It just gets completely out of whack. Your hormone production goes haywire.
Like what?
Testosterone plummets in men. Progesterone and estrogen cycles get disrupted in women. Your gut lining becomes more permeable. The whole leaky gut phenomenon is highly correlated with chronic stress, leading to food sensitivities and autoimmune issues.
So your digestion goes, your
Yeah.
hormones go.
Your immunity is one of the first things to really take a hit. You start catching every cold that goes around the office. And then there's the big one, the cardiovascular risk. The data linking overwork to heart disease and strokes is robust and terrifying. You're running the engine hot, the oil is degrading, and the seals are cracking. It's a matter of when, not if.
And what about the focus cost? The source says the harder you push without stopping, the more scattered you become. This feels so counterintuitive.
It brings us right back to the prefrontal cortex, the CEO. It's an energy hog. It uses a massive amount of your daily glucose budget. It has a limited tank of fuel for the day. Scientists call this concept decision fatigue.
I've heard of that.
Every decision you make, big or small, depletes that tank a little bit. If you don't stop to refuel, and I don't just mean eating, I mean letting the neurons rest and repolarize, your ability to focus degrades significantly. You start looking for shortcuts. You start multitasking.
Which we know now is the death of real productivity.
Multitasking is a myth. It's just rapid task switching. And every single switch has a metabolic cost. You burn precious mental fuel just to switch from your email to your spreadsheet and back again. So at the end of the day, you're completely exhausted, but you feel like you've accomplished nothing of substance.
It's like revving the engine in neutral for 8 hours, all the noise and heat, but you haven't moved an inch.
Perfect analogy.
Okay, I'm sold on the problem. I'm sufficiently terrified, my brain is shrinking, my heart is exploding, and my business is probably failing because I can't stop working long enough to have a good idea. So how do I fix it? This moves us into Section 5, strategic recovery. And I love that the source calls it rebranding rest.
Yes, this is so important. We need a new marketing campaign for rest.
The line is, rest isn't weakness. I feel like I need to tattoo that on the inside of my eyelids. Why is that psychological barrier so high for high achievers? Why do we feel so guilty?
Because for our entire lives, we have tied our identity, our sense of self-worth, directly to our output. The logic chain in our subconscious is, I am what I produce.
And so if I am resting?
If I am resting, I am producing nothing, therefore I am nothing.
Wow. Okay, when you say it out loud like that, it sounds insane.
It is insane, but it's a logic chain that runs deep. We feel guilty because we feel we haven't earned the right to rest. But the source tries to completely flip this script. This isn't about being lazy. It's about learning when enough is enough.
So how do we actually rebrand it in our own minds?
You have to start viewing it as a core performance enhancer. You don't see a Formula One pit crew feeling guilty for changing the tires midway through a race. They don't say, oh man, real cars should just drive on the rims until they explode.
No, of course not. That would be stupid.
It would be stupid. They change the tires because fresh tires are faster. Rest is your new set of tires.
Rest is the fueling station, not the parking lot. I like that.
Precisely. If you truly want to beat your competitors in the long run, you need to learn to out-recover them. Because the person who recovers the best is the person who can maintain high intensity sustainably over the longest period of time.
Okay, so let's talk about the practicalities. The source has a section on real versus fantasy routines. This hit home for me because I see these influencers online with their 2-hour perfect morning routines.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Wake up at 4 a.m., ice bath, meditate for 45 minutes, journal for 30, red light therapy, gratitude walk. I have kids. I have a commute. If I try to do that, I'm just adding a whole new list of chores to my day. I'm more stressed than when I started.
And that's what the source calls the recovery performance paradox. When the recovery routine itself becomes another rigid, stressful checklist you can fail at, it's no longer recovery. It's just another form of work. The source explicitly warns against these fantasy routines. They aren't designed for real life.
So what does real-life recovery look like for a busy person?
It's about leveraging biology, not lifestyle trends. It's about small, targeted interventions. The source calls them micro-recoveries.
Okay, give me some examples. What can I actually do?
One of the most powerful and simple tools mentioned in the deeper research is something called optic flow. When we're working especially on screens, we're using foveal vision that's laser-like focus on a small point. This is neurologically linked to alertness and threat detection. To recover, you need to deliberately engage your panoramic vision. The easiest way to do this is to go outside, or even just look out a window and look at the horizon, or the furthest thing you can see. Soften your gaze so you can see the periphery on both sides.
So just staring into space.
Staring into distance. This simple act signals to your amygdala that you are safe, that there are no immediate threats lurking. It literally flips a switch in your autonomic nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest. Takes 5 minutes.
Okay, I can do 5 minutes. That seems manageable.
Another fantastic tool is something called NSDR, non-sleep deep rest. There are lots of guided protocols online, sometimes called Yoga Nidra. It's a 10 to 20-minute guided relaxation that puts your brain into the same slow-wave states as deep sleep, but without you actually falling asleep. The studies show it can replenish dopamine reserves even better than a short nap.
So instead of scrolling through toxic social media on my lunch break,
you put in your headphones, close your eyes in your office or your car, and do 10 minutes of NSDR. You will come back to your afternoon work session with a rebooted prefrontal cortex. That is a strategic use of a break. Scrolling TikTok is just more input, more noise, more cognitive drain.
the source also talks about making you sharper, not softer. I think this framing is key for the alpha types, the high achievers listening to this.
Yes, absolutely. We have this deep-seated fear that if we rest, we'll lose our edge, we'll get soft. The reality is the opposite. Rest doesn't make you soft. It allows you to be hard and sharp when it actually matters.
How so?
Think about an elite sniper. What do they do before they take a shot? They are perfectly still. They are perfectly calm. They control their breathing to lower their heart rate. That stillness, that state of recovery, is what allows for the single, precise, effective shot.
If they were shaking and hyperventilating and running around, they'd miss the target.
They'd miss every time. Recovery gives you the mental and physical stability to take the important shots in your career and your life.
I love that. Be the sniper, not the machine gunner, spraying bullets everywhere and hoping one hits.
Exactly. Spray and pray is fake hustle. One shot, one kill is high performance.
So let's get into the practical application of building a sustainable career. The source talks about shifting your mindset from endurance to sustainability. What's the real difference between those two words?
It's a fundamental paradigm shift. Endurance asks the question, how long can I last before I collapse? It inherently assumes that a collapse is inevitable. It's a war of attrition against yourself.
And sustainability.
Sustainability asks a much better question. How can I set up my life and my work so that I can keep performing at this high level happily and healthily for the next 10, 20, 30 years?
That requires a completely different operating system in your head.
It does. It requires you to do something that feels incredibly unnatural for a high performer. Leave energy on the table at the end of the day. It means choosing to stop work at 6:10 p.m. even if you feel like you could push until 8:00 p.m.
Ugh, that is so hard to do. Leaving juice in the tank feels like wasting potential. It feels lazy.
It feels like waste, but it's actually a strategic investment. You are banking that leftover energy for tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. You're investing in consistency. The career graph of a burnout worker is a massive spike, followed by a massive prolonged crash. The graph of a sustainable high performer is a steady, compounding upward trend. Consistency beats short-term intensity every single time.
And if we don't listen, if we hear all this, we nod our heads, but we ignore the science, ignore the logic, and just keep grinding. That brings us to the final and most sobering section, the ultimatum.
The warning. The final invoice.
The source has this one line that is just chilling. If you never stop, your body will eventually stop you.
And that is not a threat. It's not a motivational phrase. It is a statement of biological inevitability.
The forced stop.
The forced stop. I have seen this happen to some of the most brilliant, successful people I know. They push and they push. They ignore the chronic insomnia. They ignore the constant irritability. They ignore the weird stomach pains and the chest tightness. And then, bang!
What does the bang look like in real life?
It looks like a panic attack in a board meeting where you are so sure you're having a heart attack that they call an ambulance. It looks like throwing out your back so badly while picking up a bag of groceries that you can't sit in a chair for 3 weeks. It looks like a shingles outbreak or a viral infection that hospitalizes you because your immune system has effectively ceased to exist. Your body will find a way to get the rest it needs, with or without your permission.
And the ultimate irony is that forced stop, that 3 weeks you can't work, that 6 months of recovery, it takes way, way longer than the daily breaks you refuse to take would have.
Infinitely longer. A full burnout crash can take 18 months to 2 years to recover from, neurologically and physically. You lose a year and a half of your career, your income, your life, because you weren't willing to take 20 minutes a day to go for a walk and look at the horizon. It's bad math.
Bad math. I think that's the phrase that's going to stick with me from this whole conversation. It's not heroic. It's just a terrible calculation of risk and reward.
It is. You are borrowing energy from a loan shark. You get the short-term benefit now, which is powered by adrenaline and cortisol, but the interest rate is 1,000%. And when the shark comes to collect, he doesn't take your money. He eats your health, your relationships, and your career.
Okay, that is a visceral image. But I think we need it. We need to really understand the stakes here.
The choice is incredibly simple at the end of the day. You can either schedule your maintenance or your body will schedule your breakdown.
Schedule the maintenance or schedule the breakdown. I'm writing that one down.
There is no third option.
Yeah.
The laws of physics always win.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to synthesize this. Because we've covered a lot of ground from, the physics of engine heat dissipation all the way to the neuroscience of the amygdala.
Let's just recap the core pillars, the big takeaways.
Okay. First, the burnout paradox. It's not the hard work that's going to kill you. It's the lack of an off switch. You need true cessation, not just a pause where you're still monitoring things.
Second, identify and be ruthless about eliminating fake hustle in your life. Ask yourself, are you actually working or are you just performing the idea of work? Are you moving the needle or just jiggling the mouse so your status stays green?
Third, that thin line between discipline and self-abuse. Discipline builds you up over time. Self-abuse breaks you down. You have to learn to spot the difference between good pain, which signals growth, and bad pain, which signals damage.
Fourth, remember the neurological reality of this. Your brain physically rewires itself under chronic stress. If you want to be creative, focused, and emotionally intelligent, you must protect your prefrontal cortex from being bathed in cortisol all day long.
And finally, and maybe most importantly, rest is a strategic weapon. You have to rebrand it in your mind. It's not weakness. It's the pit stop that allows you to win the race.
And keep it real. No fantasy routines that just add more stress. Simple, biological resets. Look at the horizon. Non-sleep deep rest. A few minutes of genuine silence.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. We always like to end with something provocative, something to chew on. I want you, the listener, to look at your calendar or your to-do list from the last week, and I want you to find one thing, just one, that you did purely out of fake hustle or a habit of being busy.
Maybe it was that 8:00 a.m. meeting that really could have just been a one-sentence email. Maybe it was staying up late to answer a bunch of messages that no one was going to read until the next morning anyway.
Find that one thing and then ask yourself the hard question. If I had just deleted this from my life, would my business have collapsed? Or would I have just been a little less tired?
Be brutally honest with yourself. Were you practicing discipline or were you just abusing the machinery for the sake of it?
Protect the asset. At the end of the day, you are the asset.
You only get one.
You only get one tank of this finite fuel, folks. Don't burn it all revving your engine in the driveway.
Use it wisely to go somewhere amazing.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Thanks for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take care.